Hey everybody, George here again with another episode of the In Good Spirits podcast. I'm here with my friend Chris.
George, how are we doing today? This is the busy season for you. This is the holiday season. And whoop-de-doo.
Yes, I don't know how much of my bloodstream is currently caffeine, but it's probably close to 98, 99%, and that is the only way I'm upright right now.
Oh, and the version of caffeine you take is like the most processed version of caffeine possible, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much like the crack cocaine of caffeine, yeah.
Yeah, straight into your veins, obviously.
Well, what kills me is my normal go-to Orange Red Bull I think it's been discontinued or the pandemic has made it impossible to get or something. So I've been drinking Amp, which I haven't had since I was a teenager.
Wow.
And let me tell you, it comes out the same color as it goes in.
Probably disturbing the first time you see it.
Well, I thought I was turning into, the Incredible Hulk or something, gamma radiation P. But I know that's what everybody wanted to hear about tuning in today,
Yeah,
Green pea.
We're here to talk about a classy spirit, finished in an amazing barrel, and we start off with Amp Mountain Dew. This is the kind of classy organization we are here at the In Good Spirits podcast.
I have good news though. My the Steez Orange Organic Energy drinks that I have to order from Amazon now have returned. I got them.
Wow.
So now I won't have green pea starting tomorrow.
It's great to have organic energy drinks. I mean, or you could just drink coffee like an adult. Either way works.
Yeah, but that takes time, effort, and I do I like cold beverages in the morning.
Oh, that's fair.
And throughout the day.
That's fair.
But
so, George, what brought us together on this delightful winter evening?
Probably one of the coolest whiskeys probably either of us have had this whole year, honestly. At least for me.
Oh, it's so fascinating. And so before we say even what it is, when I walked into Parkway and I read the label, it's like somebody created something cater-made for me. Like there's like, oh, we want to bring him in specifically to buy this product. And I'm like, yeah, this was made exactly for me. There's almost nothing that caters to my level of nerdery about our region and about well-made spirits. And this is like everything I want all in one.
Yeah, it really, they needed to put your face on the label. It's literally, it's the perfect whiskey for you. And I don't know what you thought of it yet because we have not talked about it at all. But it's very much, it was made for you. But for those of you who can't see the out of focus bottle over my shoulder, it's
backwards.
It is Barrell. It's a private release of it done by the Skurnik distributor, or the distributor for it, Michael Skurnik. And it is finished in Herman J. Weimer Noble Select Riesling barrels. And I will let you talk about Weimer, as I know you have an intimate relationship with them. While I pour mine.
I mean, when it comes to Finger Lakes producers, Weimer's right at the top. They're, an old school, German started Riesling place, and it's their level of consistency, their level of dedication to making amazing wine in the Finger Lakes, from whites to reds as well. But when it comes to Riesling, there's not many places that are going to exceed their level of dedication and quality, either with the blends or with specific vineyards that they run. From the Josef to the Magdalena. I mean, it's amazing the level of dedication they have to Finger Lakes wines. This is on the west side of Seneca Lake, which that stretch of wineries from Ravines to Billsboro to Fox Run and Kemeter. It's just a murderer's row of Riesling with Weimer, right in there. And the fact that we have this Kentucky juice, right? This is bourbon from Kentucky.
It is all Kentucky juice. However, I'll just read right off the text sheet.
Oh, sure.
BH11 private release whiskey is a microblend of Kentucky whiskeys aged up to 18 years in ex-bourbon barrels and then accented with a 5 to 10-year-old Kentucky bourbon and rye. It's then finished in the barrels we just talked about, bottled at 113.96 proof. The yield is only 28 cases and 4 bottles.
Oh, and just to talk a little bit more about the finish, because we're going to talk about what this means inside the whiskey. But when they're referring to Noble Select, in this case, it's a late harvest Riesling. A lot of people know Riesling as an ice wine, meaning it was frozen and concentrated. This is more on the late harvest, which means it stayed on the vines longer, and they're referring to a noble rot called botrytis that brings huge honeyed notes to a Riesling, which can be delightful if properly balanced. And I mean, it's when you get a little bit of those botrytis notes in Riesling, it can be just ethereal in its, those extra honeyed notes that gets added to the other, stony and stone fruit notes that we get in our Riesling from the Finger Lakes.
Who would have thought fungusy, moldy stuff would make such great wine, right?
Oh, yeah, it's so awesome. Oh, man.
But anyway.
So when we're talking about this, they've got old Kentucky bourbon. They brought in younger stuff to keep it lively, which they say accenting with it. Really what they mean is they've got old bourbon and they've got younger stuff to bring the liveliness to it, so it's not overly smooth. They're trying to keep it a little bit sharp is what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar principle to a lot of the High West stuff where, some of the older stuff, I don't want to say one-dimensional, but it's definitely dustier and rounder, and it's got a lot of depth, but it's also not... it's kind of just not quite fully well-rounded in that regard, I guess. So the younger stuff brings more excitement, a little less of the astringency of too much wood. Because the unfortunate reality is American whiskey really isn't, by design, made to get that old without getting a little astringent. So the younger stuff definitely balances it out, and people like younger whiskey than they think they do is all I'm going to say on that one.
No, I think it's generally true. It's easy to look at more is better, but more isn't always better when it comes to this stuff. We've talked about that before in other episodes. But I'm glad they did this because this. I see George's face. I'm gonna do some smell. The official term, smell test for whiskey.
The scratch and sniff.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's you definitely get the the vanilla-y, bourbon-y, typical bourbon stuff, but there's so much going on in the nose. It's hard to even discern specifics, but that there's a wine influence here.
Oh yeah, because the honey notes are huge on it, and definitely the bourbon itself is standing out way more than some of the rye they put in it. But I think what little does come through on the rye plays super nicely with the wine notes in there too, because it's a little of that grassiness, but it plays really nicely with all the fruit from the Riesling there.
Yeah, and I am getting some fruit on the nose. It's hard to discern what it is, but it's everything's bright on the nose. You get a little bit of that deepness from that, like the honeyed wine, but everything else is very bright on the... George has found a visitor for those on the audio version. He's getting his face cleaned very nicely by his beautiful pup there.
Yeah, it's been a few months since we've had a chance to record, so of course everything possible is gonna go however.
Ooh.
But anyway, man, the nose, like
the more I'm smelling this, I'm just getting richer. It's richer but light on. It's dancing all over. It's pretty fantastic.
I get those fruit notes though. I definitely get like fresh apple, like very like if you took honey and poured it over slices of apple. like really thin slices of maybe like a Granny Smith or Golden Delicious or something.
Yeah, something with a little bit of sharpness because, like I said, it's very lively on the nose. It's not like a cooked apple by any means. It's definitely fresh. You can almost smell acidity, and it's the brightness more than acidity, but you can smell that brightness.
Yeah, I agree completely on that.
Mm. Wow. Man, the finish on it is so Riesling because you almost get some minerality on the finish because the finish is dry, which is weird considering how much round, sweet, honeyed flavor is on it. But it goes quick. It doesn't linger for too long. This isn't syrupy like it could be if it was an ice wine. You know, if it was in a thicker barrel, but you get that Riesling finish. You still get that dry honey, but you get a little bit of that minerality at the end, which maybe it's suggestive, but I don't know. It finishes so cleanly.
It really does. Even though we skipped over the palate on that, there's a lot to say about the finish here because, yeah, it's got the minerality. It's got the spice of the rye comes through a little more. The bourbon definitely rounds it out with a little bit of carameliness, but it's very Riesling minerality and rye baking spice. And it just comes out so dry, but it lingers too. You're tasting it for a while.
Yeah, and you get some of that oxidation. You know, that longer late harvest part of it. You get a little bit of that. You know, it rounds everything out at the end. But you're right when you're talking about the main part of the palate. This is not a thick textured. It doesn't have a lot of texture to it. You know what I mean? It's not thick. It's not coating your palate. Considering how high a proof it is. This is what, 114 we talked about?
Just under, yeah, like 113.96, I think it was. Yep, 113.96.
Considering the proof, it doesn't linger too long. I mean, it does because it has a long finish, but it's not rich on the palate, although the flavors are, you know, that first hit is just, it's sumptuous. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, without being overly heavy or rich, it's got a lot of depth to it though. Like there's just layers and layers and layers of flavor there, but it's not cloying. It's not overwhelming. It's not over the top. It's very elegant.
Yeah, and I mean, it's weird now that we talked about that drying effect. Like I'm getting drying effect on the top of my palate, you know, at the back of my mouth. It finishes so interestingly dry, and this isn't the kind of thing that's common. Like you don't see bourbon finished in Riesling barrels much, if at all. And the fact that we get to try something like this is a credit to, you know, the flexibility that they've developed to try different stuff like this versus, you know, just the classics, you know, finishing in, you know, red wine casks, finishing in port, finishing in sherry, finishing all this stuff. I mean, I've never seen something quite like this.
Yeah, I have seen a Riesling barreled whiskey before. I never got to try it though, because I believe it was a contract job by a Finger Lakes distillery for an I don't believe it was actually available in New York or something. I don't remember, but so I never got to try it. But if it tasted anything like this, I'm sure it was incredible.
Oh yeah,
but
well, it's not for everybody because I know there's a reason those are the common things. Because you know what you're getting with sherry, you know what you're getting with port, you know what you're getting with all that stuff. Even though there's different versions and all that, but you know you're getting those huge oxidated fruit notes. You're getting that boldness. You're getting, you know, Bordeaux, like that one, that Irish whiskey we tried. You're getting all those huge notes. While this, even though it brings a lot of character, it colors it a lot, but it doesn't dominate the flavor profile.
Right, and I think a big part of why we don't see that too, though, is there's not a lot of Riesling done in barrels anyway.
No, it makes sense, and especially here in the Finger Lakes, we don't do a ton of barrel aging. A number of places do, And it's welcomed when they do, especially when it's done, with, aged casks, nothing new
Yeah,
oak.
no new
It
oak.
would,
Actually,
dominate.
the those forge Rieslings, those all see oak, but
Oh, yeah.
it's definitely relatively neutral oak by the time it sees it. But
Oh yeah, I grabbed. Not to pivot this into a wine podcast, but Forge Cellars, again, one of the absolute top of our Riesling producers here in the Finger Lakes, actually just got, I think it was number 31 on Wine Spectator's top 100 list for 2020, which is amazing.
that was actually one of the single vineyards too, wasn't it? I just don't remember which one was
No,
it.
that's the Classique actually.
The Classique. Okay.
So that's so Forge does single vineyards as well, and then a Classique, which is their blend, but it's every year super consistent. And if you're a Riesling fan, and if you like wine, you should be a Riesling fan. Not to tell you what to like, but and if you can find this, if you're in our area, you should be able to find it. But get some, have some. You're gonna want to drink this. It's a phenomenal Riesling every year.
Same with our Pinot Noir, but again, before we go too much into wine again, let's talk about the palate on this whiskey, the actual the meat of it, because it's definitely elegant, it's delicate, it's not overly cloying, but despite not being cloying, there's honeysuckle, honeycomb, more honeyed fruit, caramel, vanilla, a little bit of a eucalyptusy baking spice.
Yeah, the baking spice is surprisingly present, but not on the front palate. It hits in the mid range of the process of the whiskey itself. But right away, you're right, that honeysuckle, you're getting that floral, but not, again, it's not over the top. This isn't like drinking elderflower liqueur. This isn't like anything like that. It's everything in balance.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's interesting as your palate acclimates to the high proof, it gets a little drier. That sweetness dissipates a little bit as you're repetitively hitting it. But that first sip I had was that huge boost of that honeyed, lightly floral, all that stuff. And the bourbon part of it itself is delicate. This is not a dark, this is not a dark spirit. This is relatively light in the glass. Like a light medium caramel, nothing crazy.
Yeah, like a little darker than straw colored, yeah.
Yeah. It very pleasant. Again, this is lively. I think that's the best way to describe it. It's lively with enough maturity not to be dumb.
Yeah.
It's a very, it's vibrant, but it's got that edge of maturity that makes it easy to go back to over and over again. It's not just sweet on sweet on sweet. It's wants you to go back. It's like adding salt to caramel.
On that note, I get a salted caramel note to it too, and it's kind of buttery too.
I think buttery makes a lot of sense in that middle. The first flush over your palate, but that right after the first flush is very rich. And again, we're picking that richness out of something that moves and dances on your palate. This isn't like a aged, some of the aged rums that are just butter on butter on butter. This is notes along the path as it bounces around your palate. Wow.
Something else I kind of get. Have you ever had a Sicer before?
I don't think so.
It's
or maybe I have, but
it's a co-fermentation of honey and apples. Well, apple juice or cider rather.
Interesting. Now that you mentioned it, maybe I had it once, but not in any way I can recall. I've had a couple local made meads. I think out in Medina where I had some that were pretty well made, but not many around here.
I'll have to get you a few. But Sicer's really cool, and it's got like a honey, appley taste to it because obviously it's honey and apples, but I definitely get, especially because of the acidity from the wine, definitely comes through a lot.
Man, this is a really special product. It's hard to, like I said, it's not going to be for everybody necessarily, but I can't say enough that this is such a unique expression that if you love the finger lakes, if you love Riesling, if you love well-made, this is just well thought out. Everything about this is well thought out. It makes complete sense when you drink it.
Yeah, it's damn near perfect in its own way.
Yeah. And this is the kind of thing I'll be so happy to share with people, to show them this is where you can go with a little bit of creativity. This is where you can go with a little bit of forethought. You know, it's not just big bourbon to be big. This is unique. You're not going to see almost anything like this on any shelf.
Yeah, you're really not. And also the added bonus, you get to say, if I were in a bottle, this is me.
I couldn't have been happier when I saw it, and I'm so thrilled that they did this and that we got a chance to talk to it, because this is special. It really is. I'm super happy that it got mentioned and that we got a chance to taste it. I'm glad you got some too, because this is.
Oh, I bought a bottle. The moment it came off the truck, I cracked it open. There was no escaping me on this one.
Wow.
Oh. It is a little expensive though.
It is,
but I think appropriately priced though. I think it's actually worth the cost of admission on this one.
Yeah, I think this was in the low 90s, I think it was.
Yeah, like 92.99 or 93ish, yeah.
Yeah, you know what? You're not going to see expressions like this mixing, old age bourbon, new, unique barrel expression blended specifically to make this work. You have to pay for something like this. You're not going to get this at the easy, comfortable price points in the 40s or anything like that. You have to pay for uniqueness of this kind.
That's exactly it. To have a meal from a Michelin star restaurant, you're paying for a Michelin star. Period. Full stop.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and 100% worth it. But for those that end up coming over eventually to record once COVID has abated, I'll be sharing this with so many people just to let them know this is what's possible with bourbon and whiskey. It's so awesome.
Yeah, when things are normally going to be nice, I've already making plans with friends like, hey, when we're all vaccinated, we're getting together for Star Wars and whiskey night and things like that.
Oh my God. I can't wait until we can record in person here.
It'll be so much easier.
Oh my God. It's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to have people over to record again. And I've been building up my my cabinet library, so I have some different stuff. Speaking of cabinet libraries, I'm gonna throw a curveball in here, and I want to talk about rye for a second. So there's something I saw recently. This was on one of the local Facebook whiskey groups that George tied me into. This was something about Canadian-made rye from a company. I hadn't heard of them. I knew that they existed, but I didn't know anything about them. This is, what is it, Alberta Distilling or something like that?
Yeah, Alberta Premium. How about this? You've twisted my arm. I have to buy a bottle, and we will have to do an episode on it. So, quick, really fast, because we'll just have to get really into it when we actually grab some. But it is Alberta Premium, the Alberta Distillery. I can't remember the actual name of the distillery, but they are the source whiskey for Whistle Pig.
Which I've been a big fan of for a long time, and I knew that it was sourced. Their classic label was sourced, and we'll talk about more about this later. But I saw it recently, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know they had their own product line direct. So I was like, oh, I'm interested to try something from them, because I was sorting through my cabinet and I realized I only have one rye right now, and that's just not gonna fly. I burned through some of the other ryes I had, my Rittenhouse and my Whistle Pig and some other stuff. So I need to fill out the cabinet with rye again.
Well, I'll have to. I'll text you when we're done recording. How's that?
Sounds good. So I think the only other thing, we were going to chat for at least a couple minutes about regulations, because this has been a hot topic for you recently, and for those in and around the industry, this is, anytime we're talking about regulations and tariffs and all these kind of things, they can be huge drivers for how the industry is going to work, and it affects everybody. It affects purchasers, restaurants, affects everybody.
Yeah, I think right now, because of, everything going on and an upcoming potential federal excise tax increase of 400%, we could lose about 3/4 of American distilleries of all sizes. But
wow,
some relatively good news since we spoke last about it, though. There is a proposed bill that would put an extension on not raising the federal excise tax. It has not passed yet, but it would be a slight extension, not getting rid of the potential increase forever, but maybe January 1st there won't be a 400% tax increase on distilled spirits.
Now, when we're talking about excise taxes, that's inside America for the distilleries where their taxes go up?
Correct. So basically every time alcohol is produced, period, there is taxes paid on it. And there's a potential 400% increase on those taxes.
That's insane. And it's already so difficult for the smaller distilleries because they don't make it the huge volumes of the place we just mentioned, like that Alberta Distilling or MGP or the major producers of distilled spirits in the US. These are places doing much smaller volumes, and the taxes and keeping their prices down is as challenging already as it is. And adding that on top makes a lot of it out of reach for a lot of general consumers.
Absolutely. If people can't afford to buy the whiskey, you can't afford to make it.
Oh, we've had such a resurgence in the last 10 years with distilleries, not just in New York State, but all around the country. And the level of creativity and all this stuff is just exploding. And to cripple them like this would just be criminal at this point.
It would, because first, the tariffs absolutely massacred export business for distilleries in America. And I don't care what anyone says, the number of Americans who would have to purchase more American will not be greater than all of Europe. So, the amount more we would have to drink of American products as Americans is just astronomical, and it's just not physically possible. So that hurt a bunch of distilleries, and then the pandemic is massacring distilleries too, because the increase in sales of beverages overall are not craft. It's comfort, big brand, volume stuff. And then the potential increase in taxes would be the final nail in the coffin for a lot of places that haven't already hammered that last nail in.
Yeah. Well, it's terrible because, when we're talking about all these are all small businesses. These are all things that are local. These are different. And it's the same thing with restaurants right now. All the large chains and the corporations are getting these benefits, and they're able to survive without support from the government. And it's so criminal that we're going to lose so many great local places. That on all these things, we need to keep the businesses afloat, so we can have amazing things like this, because these things don't happen from the major companies that everybody knows.
No, they don't.
These things can't happen. They can't happen that way because you can't get these unique expressions. Like hell, the one you pointed me to before, this Texas burn we're going to talk about another time. This balcones and this stuff that's coming out from all over the country is so cool. And this is why we want to do this, not to talk about the majors. Not that we won't,
Oh,
but that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about fun and interesting and exciting, and all that stuff matters.
oh yeah, we're here. Well, we're here to talk about good spirits, and you know what? It's not just the big boys making them. Yes, they make a lot of
No.
them, but
They do, but, well, we'll talk more about taxes another time because this topic will never go away.
no, never.
But what we can say for sure is that this expression of Barrell, if you want to look it up online, by the way, this is their BH11 blend. And this is their Kentucky whiskey finished in Herman J. Weimer Noble Select Riesling barrels. If you do find it on the shelf, I could not recommend it enough. It's so well done. And if you're into well-made blends, they've got so many different options on their website, depending on what you can find in your local store. I've had a couple other samples at tastings, and I've never had anything that I thought wasn't worth its time.
Or not worth the cost either. Their stuff is definitely not cheap, but it's one of those rare instances where, you know what, this is worth every penny of the 90-something dollars it was.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're going to close out this episode of In Good Spirits. George, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Find me at Whiskey Jedi with the E on Instagram. If you find the guy without the E, it's not me, but I'm following him now too.
And you can find me at Stromy on Twitter and Instagram, Food About Town on Facebook, and you can also find me on the Food About Town podcast. I recently released an episode with Amy McAmer from Herd Orchards, which was an amazing conversation, and hoping to record a lot more soon. It's a beautiful time to catch up with people, so everybody be good to yourselves and drink good spirits.
Cheers.
Cheers.